There we go. There we go. So we started recording a little bit late, but that's okay. Everybody will get the gist of it and the information if they need it. So like I said, QST through AWR has a way to report silent keys. As you can tell, there's multiple ways to confirm a copy of the obituary notice, which I just sent the link to the website. And I filled out their silent key form. It's basically their name, call sign, city, state, things like that. And I think, to me, it's a good way to let people know, hey, we've lost a ham. Okay. I believe once this is done, it'll also be reported on QRZ as well as a silent key, so that those of us who are looking for certain call signs may eventually get them as well, if you'd like to do something like that. And that whole process starts, and that's a whole nother, that could be a topic in itself, to be honest with you. All right. All right. So this is a little thing I found online about the National Silent Key Archive. They have a website. This has been going on for a long time. And basically, it's a way to honor silent keys. Okay. They may be gone, but they're not forgotten. We are a unique group of individuals. And to be honest, a lot of us, this is like a second family to us. Okay. So it's good to remember those that we've lost. This is just, like I said, a little thing on how to, what Mike Carroll, N4MC, did for years, and says about the thing, National Silent Key Archive. You can go out there and look it up. There's call signs out there galore. I believe I did Stars as well when he passed away. I think I did Doug, so they all should be out there as a remembrance. Okay. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. Let me see here. I've got, hang on a second. I got something that's not showing up right here. Something's not hiding like it should, so that's what I was trying to. Nope. Okay. Well, I got a thing that keeps coming down, but I have a little or lot of ham radio gear. What am I going to do with it? Over the last couple of years, as part of this club, Doug Altman, KE0SI, who's also a silent key, did a lot for this club when it comes to silent keys. He would help families either sell their equipment, find new homes for it. The club acquired some of it, but he spent a lot of time researching on eBay and things like that. So there's multiple different things you can do with your radio equipment. Like I said, what do you do with your gear once I'm gone? Unless you share what you wish to your family, they're not going to know what to do with your stuff. Unless you have a family who's in the hobby, most of them are going to say, oh, this is junk, and may just throw it out. Well, guess what? It's electronics. Are we supposed to throw it in the trash? Technically, no. We need to get it recycled, right? Things like that. So, what do? You can throw it out. Of course, you want to recycle it properly if possible. Donate it, but where? Or sell it, but how? So this is going to kind of go through a couple of things on what you can do. A couple of things to remember. Some items are electronic parts that have special rules when discarding as waste. You need to check with your local laws and recommendations on discarding electrical equipment. I know EcoCycle, I think, will take some electrical equipment. They charge for like plasma TVs because of the mercury and things like that. But there are places that will take electronics. Donations are a great way to get rid of the equipment. Check with your local amateur radio clubs and see if they are looking or can help with the donation, or maybe even offer it to you. A lot of clubs will also offer a tax receipt for the donation, since most of us are 501c3s. Give it to another family member. Get them interested in the hobby. I plan on putting my stuff, I'm still documenting all my stuff, but I would like to see my HTs go to either my kids or my grandkids, maybe, or something for them to play with and learn, and use them as scanners at first or whatever to listen, and then maybe get them involved in the hobby and get their ticket. So there's things like that you can do with your equipment. Selling. Probably the hardest for family members to do, but not impossible. eBay, Facebook, Nextdoor, etc. is all a good place to sell used amateur radio equipment. Pawn shops are known to take gear. So you don't always get the great deals, though. I know of one guy that checks out pawn shops, and he's actually got quite a few good deals from that. You got places like Ham Radio Outlet that'll do consignment. Hamfest, great place to sell equipment. Buy a table. You can put that in your instructions. Hey, there'll be Hamfest coming up. Go buy a table and sell my gear, and this is what I want you to sell it for, or whatever the case may be. And then slide 11 of this presentation has a lot of additional companies for selling gear. There's Ham Estate, there's QRZ, QTH. All these places have swap places and things like that where you can sell gear potentially as well. Some of those you have to be licensed to get on, but you can find some help doing that. This is an article. I'm not going to go through it too much, but this is an article I found online about silent key estate planning. It's kind of a small guide. It was a 2-page article in QST back in 2019. So this will be in a presentation. You can go through it. It talks about getting organized, donation options, designing a I can't even talk tonight. Finding somebody to handle your equipment, disposing of estate items, planning ahead, things like that. So this is some really cool information in a very short thing. And I apologize. I should apologize at the beginning. I know this is kind of a dark topic, but I feel it's a very important topic because dealing with families, as I have in the past, a lot of them are frustrated, aggravated. They're not sure what to do. They're looking for help. So I figured I'd do this presentation as a way for us to maybe prepare, because what we can do to help when we're gone, it's just going to make their lives a little bit easier in the grief and recovery process. Okay. So here is actually the ARRL has a great planning workbook online, and the link's on here. It's a PDF. They actually have individual downloads where you can fill out the PDF online and then print it and save it. But, like they say, planning in advance will help your family or friends. It can be simple, fulfilling way to share your commitment to amateur radio with future generations. We need to know what you want to do with your stuff. Okay. So this workbook has some great information in it. There's the actual workbook itself. You can download the whole thing and then fill it out if you like. Or there's forms that are actually fillable. And these are the forms that are in that same workbook. You got an inventory worksheet, list of items that you may just want to give away. There may be like some HTs that you don't care. Donate them to local Boy Scouts or whatever, local ham club, Girl Scouts, schools, things like that. Items to be sold. Some of us have some very nice equipment that we may not necessarily want to just give away, that we want to help our family as part of our helping them recover, making sure bills get paid for, things like that. Items to be donated. What do you want to part with that you want to get rid of and donate? Maybe work ahead of time with a club or another group that may want the equipment as well or need the equipment. An Aries group. If you got a bunch of HTs or maybe DMR or things like that, and since DMR is big in Colorado, you may want to look at Aries and maybe donate that kind of stuff to them. Things like that is an idea, and it's stuff that can just be discarded. We all have wires potentially for grounding. You're not going to sell that. You maybe give it away, maybe discard it. We may have some nice copper. You don't really want to discard that. You could probably resell it. But our families normally won't know this type of information unless we tell them. Okay, so we have to really just say, we don't sort of sit down with them, but fill out what you want, and then eventually sit down and say, hey, these are my wishes. Nothing more than like before we go, we usually decide that we want to be buried, cremated, whatever. We make that decision ahead of time, right? So our family knows, or we document in our trusts or our wills and things like that. So this is kind of the same concept for our radio equipment. So this is the book itself. It opens up, I don't have all the pages listed here, but this is just a link to it. You can fill it out, prepare it, put your signature on it to make it legal. You can take it to your attorney, make it even more legal. Give it to your loved ones and say, hey, these are my wishes. This is what I want you to do with the stuff. Things like that. So that's one less thing they have to worry about in the grieving and recovery process. So here's the link I was talking about outside companies. There's an auction company, Schumann Auction, Ham Estate. Ham Estate will actually come in and evaluate your equipment and costs, give you some ideas of best way to sell it, or if they want to buy it and resell it or whatever. There's Ham Radio Auctions. There's another auction site online for ham radios, QTA Swap, QRZ, eBay, Facebook. And there's another article there on how to get rid of your radio gear that I thought would be really interesting for everybody as well. You know, like I said, it's kind of a hard topic, but unfortunately, none of us are, even us that are not experienced as other folks in our club, none of us are getting any less experienced in life. And one day we may, you know, come across where we have to take care of this type of stuff. Oops. There we go. Oh, okay. I guess that was my last page. Actually, let me bring up, I'm going to bring up the worksheet really quick. What did it do? Oops.
Chucky, you gonna email the presentation around or put it on the website, or?
Yeah, it's going to go on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want everybody to have the links and everything. But let me do this because it's not, let me go there. So let me just go bring up the website really quick. There we go. I'll just kind of go through the workbook really quick and some of the stuff that has it. So ARRL has done a really good job of helping with this and giving information and things like that. So here, let's see. So I know what it is. There we go. So, you know, they've done a really good job of putting a booklet together. And of course, there's, like everything, there's advertisements in it. One of them's Ham Estate. But then there's a little introduction that kind of talks about, you know, life every day, or live every day as if it was your last, because one day you will most certainly be right. And you know, again, like I keep saying, is we don't know when. So we need to do this probably sooner than later. Like I said, you know, I've offered Jerry's family, we're going to help with his estate and his stuff. But I see so many that we've helped in the past that it's just, the family's just like, we don't know. Brian and myself, and I believe, I don't know if Ed helped or somebody else helped. There was a Silent Key in Boulder a year and a half ago, give or take. Had a 65-foot tower. Had, I mean, this gentleman had all kinds of equipment. He had like 30 or something like 7 or 8 Geiger counters, you know, all kinds of diodes and resistors and and the family's like, we don't know what to do with this stuff. Some of it was donated to LARC. Some of it they sold. We tried to help them walk through some of that stuff. They did sell the tower. Towers are fairly easy to sell, especially if you got the right price for it. And some people even come take it down, and things like that. But back to this is, you know, it tells you the basic parts of estate planning. It's just like if you're planning your estate, you know, your house, your cars, your whatever. Same concept. Got a last will and testament, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living will. This document only covers ham radio stuff, though. Okay. Again, some of the other stuff you probably will get into legality issues, and this will also help with your families for keeping your kids from fighting over it or other relatives and things like that, because you never know what's going to happen. And I've been in family fights. It's not pretty. Me and my father fought over my grandparents' estate. So, all right. So this talks about how the book is organized. Let's see if I get this scroll down a little bit. There you go. So it's organized, you know, it's intended to be a workbook because that's what we need. We need, you know, like spreadsheets or anything else. Some places document, columns, whatever. And here's a list of the things you want to consider when planning the disposition of your HF radios and amplifiers, VHF, UHF radios, amplifiers, antique radios and equipment, your accessories, headsets, microphones, keys, tuners, and some of that stuff can get pretty pricey. You got a Heil headset. I know there's people that fight over those at Hamfest. We had that happen one year. Things like that. And it was a bidding war. It was kind of fun. Kits, antennas and supports, computers and associated equipment, recognition of personal effects like awards, plaques, certificates, logbooks, photos, videos, connectors, coax. I mean, if you got what's it called? The airbound coax and stuff, some of that stuff's really pricey. If you got stuff running around and, you could potentially, say, hey, this is what it's worth. Go see if you can sell it. And the families, got a little extra to help take care of them after you're gone. So there's, like I said, there's hidden benefits sometimes in some of the stuff that we get. So here's the worksheet forms and lists. One of the special things I want to bring up about this is we don't know when we're going to go. Okay. So pricing is sometimes difficult. But they talk about here that, provide the opportunity to include an estimate of value. And I know what we used to do in the past is we would search eBay. We would search just online, QRZ, QTH, and see what people were selling it for, and would go somewhere either in the middle of that, or if the stuff was really good and smoke free and or still looked like it was a box, maybe higher end. So it is an estimate. And let your family know also it is an estimate. This is what people, of course, we're all hams. We're going to lowball everybody. We always do. We want to get the best deal, right? But sometimes there are equipment that is just not worth going low. I mean, if you paid $5,000 and you're willing to sell for $2,500, and that's what you're estimating, more than likely, if it's in good condition, it's working, you should get $2,500. That's only fair. I know when Doug used to do estimations, that was one of the hardest things he had to deal with was, what's the best price to sell to take care of it. And again, this all goes back to the family. Okay, this is for your family, or if you're helping somebody do this, it's to benefit them. Okay, and again, this talks about the worksheets, making a count. Somewhere in your will, you should make a special notation that you have this workbook, so there's no argument, because the will, of course, is the final written document for us, and put what you want done with it. There's the equipment description form where you describe all your equipment, list the items that you want to give away, items you want to sell, items to be donated, items to be discarded. I probably got some coax. I've got some cheaper RG58 and things like that, scrap pieces I got laying around. It's in a box. I'm going to tell them, just scrap it. It's not worth it, little pieces like that. But then again, I might decide, hey, this looks like it's long enough to make a tape measure Yagi antenna. Maybe I'll put a box together, excuse me, of spare parts to donate to Bart Juniors or something like that they can play with and build antennas or things like that. So, just kind of think about what you have and done with it and stuff like that. Okay. There's no right or wrong answer to that. There's also a form in here for a trusted assistance. Like it says, when any estate goes to deal with assets that are considered specialty or collector, they need to rely on someone with knowledge and experience to deal with those assets. If those items have not been known to the executor, simple liquidation sale or auction may take place, yielding far less than the true value of the specialty or collector item. Amateur radio equipment certainly falls in this category. There's some radio gear that's 20, 30, 40, 50 years old that's still worth a lot of money that collectors will buy. Especially if it works, especially if it's in mint condition, things like that. What some of these flex radio SDRs are going for, you can get for some of these older equipment with tubes that's 50, 60 years old in mint condition and works just as good, if not better than the SDR. So it's good to kind of, look at what you have and figure that out. And hey, is this something I should maybe get evaluated and things like that? Is it something that I need to get evaluated, or hey, you know what, I really don't care and go sell it for, this is what I estimate is worth and just go get rid of it. Again, it's going to be a personal preference. Everybody knows what their stuff is worth to them and what they want to give back to their family. Okay. All right. Here's a little thing about estate planning, planning your legacy. Again, you know, what do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be remembered? Things like that. You know, there's people that go out and donate millions of dollars when they pass away to nonprofits and things like that. You want to do that with your gear? That's fine. You know, it's again, it's a personal choice of what you feel is best with what you have. You know, they talk about supporting an amateur radio cause. Every year, ARRL receives a few checks completely out of the blue. Donations are unexpected. In most cases, we never spoke to the donor during their life. And although we are honored to receive such substantial gifts, we have missed the opportunity to get to know the donor and what about amateur radio was important to them. So, you know, if you know of a club that wants donations, talk to the club ahead of time, find out. I know Steve, our membership chair, has had a couple people approach him about future and donations to the club. I've had people approach me about donations to the club, things like that. And as I tell them, I said, document it. The more you document, then we know what you want. The family knows what you want, and then there's no questions asked. The last thing I want, you know, is to say, okay, well, Joe Smith, K0 whatever, said, hey, he's going to donate to LARC, and he's got, you know, $100,000 worth of equipment, and the family says, no, he's not. That belongs to us, the family. You know, so sometimes that causes issues. That's why it's good to document what you want done with your assets and things like that. And amateur radio gear. Not that really happens. Usually the family's like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. Can you guys help me out? You know, but again, it's better to just document it to make sure there's no misunderstanding or argument of where it's going to go, who it's going to go to, and things like that. Okay. Here's another one that was on the list, the Shulman auction. These sites that are in here are usually really good as far as helping with estates and things like that when it comes to amateur radio gear. So that's why they're in here. So here's a sample of a let's see, this is just the which one is this? Talks about like an item, equipment description, inventory. So if you went to individually, like this one here is estimated $300 for HF receiver, the location of it, where it's at, you know, things like that, mint condition, you know, whatever it wants. And then you can put in there, how do you want to get rid of it? Donate it, sell it, whatever. And this is, like I said, this is the kind of stuff you want to do for your high-end equipment, especially because that's going to bring you the family the biggest bang for their buck. Here's another one of the worksheets, the same thing, kind of empty. You can put a description, item number, and list your assets in it. They also have a worksheet for items to be given away. You know, what do you want? Is there things you just want to give away that's not worth selling? Bow things, for example. Personally, I'm up to, I think, 5 or 6. I plan to put in my list, donate to a club or a local Boy Scout troop. That's going to be my wishes. Okay. Ain't worth trying to go out and sell, as far as I'm concerned. Donate it. Like I said, I've got some individual cables, if I think they're long enough for antennas or something like that. I may document this box marked whatever is miscellaneous parts for building tape measure Yagis. Go donate it to Mark Juniors or Boy Scout troop or whatever. Okay. Document it. Try to be as detailed as possible, but you can potentially be generic. Like say you got a box of items, throw it in a box, mark it, box for donation, you know, or give it a name and just document it in here. This is the box name. This is what I want done with it. Okay. It doesn't have to be, you know, individual, every little piece, because us hams, we like to collect stuff. We're hoarders sometimes, and we have a lot of stuff. If you know stuff you're going to donate, put it in a box, mark it as donations or play toys or occasional take out and play with, or occasional go track satellites or whatever you want to call it, and just document it. And you can put it on here as the box name or whatever, as long as the family knows and there's some type of documentation. And here's the items to be sold. Again, item, estimated value, and instructions you want. Sell eBay. it could be as simple as, hey, Kaiser ITP said he wanted to buy this from me when I pass away. This is estimated value. Go offer it to him first. Or LARC said they would take it for X amount of dollars, and I said, sure. But it needs to be documented. Okay, that's the key. Again, with all this stuff, it's just documenting it. But at least this document, this PDF, is a way to help you organize it. Again, here's another list of items to be donated. And I think last is discarded. So, mark down your items when to be discarded. If you have an old HT that you've been using for spare parts and you don't think it's worth anything, mark it down as discarded. But again, be careful with stuff like that, because there are some small components that may have special rules as far as getting rid of, like batteries and things like that. Just can't throw it in the trash. I mean, you can, but technically you're not supposed to. You want to get recycled properly. At least help make the world a better place even when we're gone, for our kids and grandkids. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So that was kind of quick and dirty, but I think it was something that needed to be brought up, because again, a lot of us don't think about this. Again, like I said, it's kind of the dark side of the hobby, as I call it personally. But it's definitely something that now that I'm in it, I'm realizing, yeah, my family really doesn't know what to do with this stuff, right? My wife's not a ham. In fact, she wants nothing to do with the hobby, other than occasionally say, yeah, go play radio. I'm going to go do something else while you're doing that, So, it's good to think about it and make sure that we can help add to that afterwards, that we don't bring more grief and things like that, because I've seen families that are left with, thousands and thousands of bills when people pass away. I'm fortunate enough, I took care of my mother's arrangements. She's got dementia, Alzheimer's. And I did that because I didn't know, but now that's one less relief I don't have to deal with. And I'm fortunate enough she doesn't have any assets, so I don't have to worry about it. But my father passed away all of a sudden, and my stepmother didn't know what to do. So we ended up helping her with arrangements and stuff like that. And we didn't fight over a whole lot, because there's not a whole lot that my old man had that I really wanted, that he had already gotten rid of. But, like I said, my grandfather, me and my father, my grandfather passed away after my grandmother passed away, were estranged for 20 years because he basically took advantage of my grandfather, and I called him on it. But, this can cause rifts in families and things like that. And this is just one way to maybe help keep that from happening in the future. Anybody got any questions? Like I said, sorry, it's kind of a dark topic, but I think it's something we need to, we like to have fun in the hobby, but we also got to remember what we're getting ourselves into. And there is an investment. It's just like if you're a photographer, or if you're, art collector or whatever, what are you going to do with that type of stuff when it goes? And amateur gear is just as important as, say, your 69 Mustang in mint condition that you rebuilt in the garage. You're going to have that documented somewhere. Same thing needs to happen with amateur radio gear. Any questions, comments?
Comments.
Go ahead, Ed.
I haven't been personally touched by it, but I've seen 3 silent key estates. It wasn't a silent key, really. One, the guy's wife had very rapidly gone into dementia. He had to sell the house. And so in very little time, he had to dispose of all his stuff, including his amateur radio gear. 2 others were deep component level experts. They really knew their stuff about radios, and they weren't just appliance operators. They were radio builders and fixers, and quite literally, in both cases, their house was wall-to-wall equipment, not operating transceivers, but components, test equipment, and mountains of crap. And it appeared that neither one of them detected early enough that they needed to dispose of this stuff while they still had the mental ability to do so. And so they died and their kids were stuck with this house full of crap. It's not a lot different than somebody who was into rebuilding cars or, like you said, photography or a dozen other hobbies. But you can't imagine 3 bedrooms, a full basement, living room, everything except maybe the bathroom was wall to wall, components, test equipment, and other stuff. So you said live each day as if it's the last one. Well, that's not really right, because you still have a quality of life of enjoying your hobby. And so you want to leave it operational. You want to still enjoy your hobby, but the $64 question is, when do you detect that it's time to downsize and do it gracefully? That's the toughest question, because some of these lists are well and good, but when do you detect that it's time to get rid of your hobby shop full of components and test equipment and face that pain while you still have the mental agility to do so? So that's what I know.
All right, thank you, Ed. Any questions, comments, anybody? I know we, oh, go ahead.
Hey, this is Steve.
Go ahead, Steve.
I've done a lot of thought about it, trying to downsize as we get older, as we retire, what we want to do. And I thought about the amateur radio stuff that I've got, and I've got it in my trust right now. But eventually, I hoped that I would have a family member that would consider getting their technician license and passing the hobby to them. Some may want to do it, some may not. But if you have some young kids that are trying to get a hobby, probably high school kids, I don't know, junior high maybe, but I'm trying to think of that on how I can pass it through to the family. So I'm not trying to get rid of it, trying to think of how I'm going to do it, but I just protected myself in the trust by adding what I had. And as we get older, believe me, the trust things change. You sell a house, you buy another one, you downsize. So your trust is kind of like a living document. And every time you make a change, you gotta think through it, almost like Ed was saying, that you gotta think of what you're gonna do while you have the mental capability. Because if you don't share that with your family, you're not doing yourself any due justice.
And I like that idea of passing on the family. I'm actually trying to get my kids involved. Eventually, I might have grandkids. I would love to see a couple pieces of my radio make it 1, 2, 3 generations down the road. I think that would be great. You hear people having heirlooms that are, hundreds and hundreds of years old, passed on from generation to generation. And that's something maybe we could try doing as amateur radio operators as well. Getting, our grandkids, nieces, nephews, kids, whatever, involved, and say, hey, this is special to me. Will you keep it special? And, maybe get your license, learn to do the hobby. There's all kinds of cool things about this hobby now that we didn't have 50 years ago. We've got digital modes now. We've got things like DMR. When I sit there and I show somebody that is less experienced than me that I can sit here with my cell phone, no internet connection, my radio, and send somebody an email, that perks their interest a little bit. Or, send them a picture. Or, some of these technologies have been around for eons that, yeah, it's not as fast as, 1G, 10G, 40 gig, whatever we got now, internet-wise, but it's there. And also remind them what happens when you lose that cell service. What are you going to do? You know, you may want that little Baofeng and your cell phone where you can still send an email because of an application that you can use through that. You know, so there's all kinds of things to maybe get the younger generation involved and make use of your equipment as well. I had a gentleman that worked with me at over at AMD, and I gave him an HT and said, "Here, go play this. This is a scanner." And he got it. He went on and got his technician's license. You know, so you know, there's all kinds of cool things you can do with some of the stuff. You know, ideally, like my 897, I would love for one of my kids or grandkids to get into the hobby that I could pass on to them. I think that would be great. They could say, "Hey, this was grandpa's or dad's or whatever." Doesn't always happen, but you know, we could always hope it does. You know, it's just like, you know, like I said, I've got stuff that I've gotten from my grandparents and things like that. So it's generations old. It all just depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it, and how, you know, if the interest is there or not. So
There's one thing to remember, that 100-year-old bullfang could be worth $30 someday.
no, it'll be $31.99. Yeah, you never know. I mean, Baofeng prices could go up. You know, we could find out that, you know, like Cadillac converters, there's something in a Baofeng that's swapped as a precious metal. You can no longer find, so people are stealing Baofengs now instead of Cadillac converters. You know, you never know. You know, we can't predict the future.
I doubt that. No, no offense. I kind of doubt that, Chuck.
There is some copper in there, right?
Well, there's platinum in
There's platinum.
converters, so
There you go. So yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, you never know what things could be worth in the future, you know. But then again, you know, if we go Star Trek way, you know, there will be no money. You know, everybody will be equals and things like that. But that's way, way down the road. So we have to, you know, kind of live today. And Ed, you know, and I agree with you to a degree, Ed, as far as the statement, but you know, live today as the last day. That's why I enjoy the hobby. I do the hobby. I try to do it every day if I can. You know, I've been doing APRS on the way to work in the morning. I listen to slow scan TV on the way home at night on my HF rig and set my cell phone up next to the speaker and decode pictures from people around the United States and things like that. So you know, I live every day doing the hobby because this is what I love to do. And this is, to me, is, you know, my way to get away from the everyday ho-hum of crap, another 8 hours of the job in front of a damn computer listening to my boss bitch about something, you know. This to me, this is fun, you know. And I just wish more people get involved, but there's other hobbies that other people do as well. So, you know, I hold nothing against them, but you know, there are other people that are also interested in this, and we just got to find those people and see what we can do to help them out as experienced hams and get them involved. Any questions, comments? Was I too dark? Hopefully not.
No.
Tried to keep it a little bit light and educational, but I think it was definitely something that at least the time I've been with the club, I don't remember presentation on this topic. But I thought, you know, as the board president and having 2 silent keys in the last 2 years, I figured it was time to probably bring it up and start really thinking about it because we never know.
are you going to make this presentation available?
Yeah.
I'd like to use it for end card if you don't mind.
It'll cost you $100. I'm kidding, Joe.
Oh, that's no problem.
Oh, sorry. In-card has all kinds of money to spend.
Yeah, and we still haven't paid you for soda, so
No, you haven't, but we'll figure that out on Saturday.
that should be. I warned him, but yeah, this is really something I've never thought about. And it does make sense because we've had, you know, Kerry Miller passed away,
Yep.
and Jerry Jerry wasn't part of our club, but Kerry was, and you know, OJ, everybody knew OJ, and that was just. And then, so yeah, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about all this stuff. Of course, my wife tells me about it all the time, but I don't listen. So,
Well, and again, you know, it's going to be our XYLs are going to have to suffer if we don't have this documented and things like that, unless they, of course, go before us, which, you know, my ex-wife, that wouldn't have been a problem. This wife, I don't know. You know, I'd really pretty like to stay around as long as possible. But
are you ranking them?
did you go out to OJ's house? Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
still recording.
I
by
didn't
the
know
way.
this. What was that, Charlie?
You're still recording.
Yeah, I know. That's fine.
You can
I-
forget
my-
the $100. I got you now, sucker.
My divorce has been fun a long time, so I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, like I said, it is kind of unfortunately one of those things in life we don't like to talk about. And I sat there and I thought about it, and I literally contemplated going, okay, I don't have a speaker. I really want to go down this road. You know what? In the honor of Doug and Jerry, I think this was, the timing was, to me, I think was going to be okay. Okay. I dealt with Doug's wife and his estate and helped with that. I actually helped cost it out, sell it. And I think his estate made almost $4,000 that I sold for his wife and daughter. Things like that. In fact, we still have an antenna of his that is for sale in the storage shed if anybody's interested. Tri-band, Yagi. But things like that. And we try to help where we can, but we need to think of ourselves too. So that's why I said, if we have our ducks in a row, it's easier for us to support other people as well that are grieving and families and stuff like that. And that's why I think that's just kind of a timely topic and something to think about. And you don't necessarily have to do it tomorrow, but think about it and how you want to do it. Maybe start documenting some stuff down, especially your high-end equipment. I've got a Yaesu 897, an 857, FT100D, my Zygu X90. I've got some HF equipment that, close to $1,000 on some of the stuff, even used. I'm going to document that and say, hey, honey, I want you to sell it. This is what it's probably worth. And guess what? Go out on a cruise with your new boyfriend. I don't care, whatever. But at least there won't be any arguments or complaints or like scratching the head going, well, what am I going to do with this stuff? Right? Because let's face it, like I said, most XYLs, unless they're in the hobby, have no clue what they're going to do with stuff. Okay. Any more questions, comments? Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Tried to keep it a little bit upbeat, even though it was kind of a downbeat type topic.
Highly necessary.
We unfortunately have to talk about things like this on occasion. And to me, to do this is actually a way for me to grieve for Jerry, to be honest. We all lost a good friend, a mentor. And this is in honor of him and Doug. And
No, I think you hit about the right point, Chuck.
Yeah.
Something gave us all something to think about, and it's just inevitable, and most of us are older and need to be planning for that anyway. So thanks for bringing it up, and you did a good job.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, anybody got anything else?